when you were a little girl?
Well, I remember that I lived in a very small 4-room house with my mom and my brother because my father died when I was 8 years old. And my cousins lived about a quarter of a mile away, and we get together almost every day to play. You know, we go over there for our half a gallon of milk every night and play all sorts of games. So it was like they were my brothers and sisters, you know,
And
because we were double cousins.
double cousins?
Yes.
And what are double cousins?
Well, a father and mother were brother and sister. That is, their father and my mother were brother and sister, and my father and their brother and sister.
I didn't know that.
Sure.
So what are they? What were
And
their names?
Well, there were Francis and Florence, Marcella and Agnes and Chris.
Marcella. I know Marcella.
Marcella. And Chris died when he was 17 years old. He was in the same age as I.
Chris.
Mm-hmm. Chris.
What did he die of?
He was shot hunting. You know, he was hunting rabbits with a neighbor boy, and he was hunting the butt end of the gun down on the ice, and he was shot through the abdomen. And the doctors came off an Alcoana, and they operated on him right in the dining room table. We were all around him when he died. And it was the same year I graduated from high school.
And then, now, did you go to normal school then after
Well,
that?
normal school was in the high school course, you see. That's 2 years of high school, and then the normal course started. So I took all the normal training courses, like methods and psychology and arithmetic, spelling, everything like that.
So how old would you have been when you
I was
graduated?
17 when I graduated, but I had to wait until I was 18 to get my teacher's certificate. So I got it in August.
So did you have any schooling past that ever?
Well, I did some in Chicago, at the Teachers College.
So tell me about your first teaching.
My first teaching was on a farm. It was in a 4-room schoolhouse, and it was just like I can't tell you how small it was. It had 4 windows, 2 on each side, and it had a little cloakroom and the coal bin, and that was all. And I had 21 pupils, and they were first grade to 8th grade. And
They were much younger than you then.
Well, one of them, I think that my 8th grader was only 5 years younger than I.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to walk a mile and a half, and in the wintertime, of course, I had to get there in time to start the coal fire, have it warm by the time the kids got there. But it was wonderful. Parents were so great, and I loved it.
And how many years did you do here?
2 years, till I was married. Mm-hmm.
So you were 19 when you were married?
No, 20.
20.
Mm-hmm. I was 20.
Oh, I know.
See, I started teaching when I was 18.
Okay. Right. Oh, that's
I walked
right.
a mile and a half,
That's right.
even in the winter, 30 below zero sometimes.
A mile and a
Mhm.
half.
Mile and a half.
Now tell the story about the pig and then how you met Grandpa.
Oh, well, Uncle Henry gave me the little pig because it was sometimes, you know, there'll be one that they won't feed like they do the others in the little, what do you call it?
The runt.
Yeah, the runt.
Okay.
So I got the runt, and it was a little white pig. And so he gave it to me, and I took it over to our home, and I fed it for about, it must have been a couple of years, and finally sold it, and I got enough money from the pig to take a trip to Chicago. And that's when I went.
And you had cousins in Chicago, right?
Oh, yeah, I had cousins. And so that's where I met Grandpa.
And how old were you then?
Well, I was, when I first met him, I wasn't even 18.
Oh, it was before you started teaching.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I hadn't even graduated yet.
And did you just meet him? Did you start dating him? Or just meet
Well,
him?
no, he was in Chicago and I was in Iowa. He came out and spent his summers then out in Iowa, you know, with Jim Ferrigan. And then I'd come into Chicago and visit, and that's how we happened together.
And then you were married when you were 20?
20. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Grandpa always said I was the farmer's daughter and he was a traveling salesman.
And then he was older though.
He was, well, when we were married, yes, he was 29.
29.
Mm-hmm.
He's 9 years older than you.
Mm-hmm.
And then his mom, he took care of his mom.
His mom, until she died 3 years before we were married.
Did you ever meet her?
No, I never got the chance to meet her at all.
So
She was a wonderful lady, I guess. Very talented, very artistic.
Okay.
So I think that's where it all comes from in our family, you know, artists and writers. Really.
Probably starts from way back from her.
Yes, and her brother, of course, was an author.
Okay.
James Warmer.
Oh, okay. Now, what was the
Chicago.
fireman?
The fireman was Frank Faulkner. Frank Faulkner. Sure, that's why
Wow.
that's why we named Francis was Francis Faulkner.
So that was Grandpa's uncle?
That was his uncle, and he lived with him. And he wasn't married, so he just doted on Dad, you know.
Oh, and he loved him.
Oh, yes.
So that's why you married him
Yes.
for Frank.
Yes.
Oh.
We almost had him named Greg. We had the birth announcements and everything made out for Gregory. And Dad, he said, you know, I'd kind of like to have him named after Uncle Frank, my Uncle Frank. And I said, okay, so that's the way it was. Francis Howard.
Was it going to be Gregory Howard then?
Yes, because that's after my brother.
Oh.
See,
Well, that
Thomas
was neat.
Alfred.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thomas Alfred?
Thomas Alfred. After
And then
Dad.
Tom. Where did you get Tom from? Just like that?
We always liked it.
Just like that.
I like that name.
So when you were married, then you moved to Chicago? Then
We
did you
moved
live
to
in
Chicago. We had our honeymoon out in the Black Hills. And then on the way back, we went to Algona. So we stopped over again and stayed there for a few days, and that's when we had the Shivaree.
What's that?
Well, Shivaree, that's when all the people come from the area. And, well, the old timers, a long time ago, they used to get tin pans and all that, but it wasn't that way. All the neighbors came, you know. And we were in Algona getting the ice cream for the Shivaree, just, you know, to treat all the people. And Uncle Henry would keep calling into the ice cream factory and saying, you know, Al, you better get another 10-gallon. Another group coming from Titanca. So, anyway, and all the neighbor ladies brought cakes, and so we had ice cream and cake, and we treated everybody.
Fun. So it's kind of like a another
Yeah,
reception,
well,
right?
it's just a fun time for everybody.
Now, did you have where was your wedding?
Oh, the wedding was in Algona, and after our wedding, it was on a holy day, so the church was packed. And
So they had it right during a service? You were married?
yeah, yes, and it was just, it was so nice. It was really beautiful. And then we all went out to the farm. We had the reception out on the farm, and all the neighbor ladies came and helped cook, and so they brought the flowers. We had gladiolus all over the house. And, it was really fun.
And then who was I know I've met you.
My cousin Florence was my bridesmaid,
Okay.
and then Alice was the flower girl,
Alice.
Mhm.
I know Alice.
and Alice Ludwig, and she was Alice Mahoney then.
What was
She was my first cousin.
first cousin?
My father and her mother were brother and sister.
Okay.
And then Florence was my bridesmaid, and Jim Ferrigan came out because he was Grandpa's best friend. And he was my cousin.
Oh, and he was your cousin.
Yeah. So
Oh,
he
that
was,
was
he was
neat.
best man. And it was kind of cute because the way they did it, they had the best man bring the bride up, and the maid of honor went up with the groom to walk down the aisle.
Oh, that was neat.
Well, of course, Alice led, you know, she was the flower girl.
Oh, and she led.
Yes.
And she led. Okay.
So, yes, it was very nice.
And then did you have a reception after that? Or
Oh,
was it?
reception on the farm, yes.
You
Mhm.
did. So you did
Yes.
have two parties then.
Oh, sure.
The Shivaree and
Yeah, the Shivaree came later, on our way, when we were on our way back.
and then after Algona, then you went back to Chicago.
Then we went to Chicago.
Oh, where was your
We
first?
lived in Palmer Square, and right across from St. Sylvester's Church in Chicago.
And you lived.
Until our house was vacated, because Grandpa owned a big stone house and two flat. And when it was vacated, then in following May, then we moved there.
Okay. So you-
And that was just after the crash, after the stock market crash, that we moved.
So you were married in 19.
We were married the year of the stock market crash, 1929.
So just before it happened.
We were married in August, and that was in October.
And then when
and-
was Uncle Tom born?
He was born 2.5 years, let's see, he was born in 32.
Okay, so you did have some time when you were married
Oh,
before
yes,
you had kids.
we did.
But it was a hard time then, right? Because of the depression
Well-
or?
Tom was born right in the middle of the Depression, and Frank too, the two of them were. And our dad just got his job back when Frank was born.
So when you had Uncle Tom, you didn't have a job.
He had lost his job on Washington's birthday, February 22nd, and Tom was born April 10th.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
and I was supposed to go to St. Anne's Hospital, you know, and it was going to cost, well, doesn't sound like much to you now, but it was $300, which was a lot of money in those days. So I realized then when he lost his job that I couldn't go there. So that's when I went to Lewis Memorial.
And that was a pub, right? It
Well,
wasn't
it's a
private,
Catholic.
it was
Yeah.
a
So, like I was told Tommy, cost $50, $60.
$60 is all I got.
That's all.
Well, hey,
Can
you
I rest
saved a lot
now?
of money.
Can I rest, please?
Yes, you
There.
can.
Oh,
When
where
you
went
were
to
a
school?
girl.
Well, I went to Wesley Township, District Number 4, and I went along with my cousins, and we'd walk to school every day. And in the spring, we were able to go barefoot home.
Oh.
We always waited for that day when we could go barefoot home from school.
How
And
long of a walk was it?
It was about almost a mile. And my Grandpa Ferrigan used to take us once in a while on the old bobsled in school. And one time I remember Bob Hoover was with us, and one of the kids fell out. We were, nobody noticed he was even gone. In the bobsled.
He was gone.
But I remember my teachers, my very, very first teachers. I remember my Minna Martin was my first teacher, and then Joe Brunswald, and Joanna Camel, and then Pearl Stephen. I think those were the 4 teachers I had in country school.
Were they
And
really
then
young?
What-
I skipped I took 7th and 8th grade one year. That was it. And then we had to go into the courthouse to take our state exams. And then if we passed them, of course, then we could go into high school.
So you skipped a grade then?
My grandma skipped a grade too.
Grandpa skipped a grade
Grandpa-
too?
Grandpa
Skipped a grade?
Yes, Grandpa skipped a grade too. But I think I was in the lower grade, some of the lower grade that we skipped.
You could read probably real well.
Oh,
Yes.
well, he was smarter than I am, a whole lot. He was always very, very smart.
I know, he always had his nose in a book.
Well, yes, but he had such a wonderful background, really he did. In history and English, he was so good in English, literature.
Was it one-room schoolhouses? and
One
stuff?
room schoolhouse with 2 outhouses, you know, boy and the girls. And they, at our school, I think we had a woodshed. I didn't have that when I was teaching. All I had was a sort of a coal bin at one end of the wardrobe, where the kids hung their clothes. And then I'd have to start the fire and shovel coal in and get it all warm before they
No,
got
that
there.
wasn't a Catholic school, that was a
Oh.
public school, right? So did
They
you go to public
it was
school?
sort of a 1 mile radius, it must have been,
Okay.
because the schools were 2 miles apart. Every 2 miles there would be a school, so I think that would be.
I didn't know that.
And the kids, some of them walked 1.5 miles to school. Some of them, I think one family walked 2 miles. These kids. They walk across the pastures.
Do you have any horses that they used to ride to school or nothing? like that?
No, but the parents would come after them sometimes, the horses, you know, when the weather was bad. Of course, there were cars at the time I started teaching, but when I was going to school, there weren't that many cars, really.
My dad went to school in Chicago though.
Dad went to school in Chicago.
Right.
Right, so he
No,
went,
right.
I think he started at the cathedral.
So he
School.
did go to Catholic school.
Oh, he did, all the way through.
All the way through.
All the way through, all the way
he
through
went
high
to the
school.
cathedral school.
Yes, he went to the cathedral. Yes. What is the name of it?
Holy Name.
Holy Name Cathedral. Went there, then he went to St. Vincent's. And of course, he graduated St. Sylvester's. And then he went to,
Did he go to St. Ignatius?
then he went to St. Ignatius for 4 years.
What was
Then
that,
he-
college or high
It's
school?
high school.
High school.
Okay.
That was a marvelous Jesuit high school. One of the best.
Then
Very
did he go
Still
to,
is.
did he go to
Yes.
college?
And he went to
though?
college
Where?
until his father died, yes. He went to Loyola.
Oh. And then he stopped and he took care of his mom.
Yes, and then after he started working at A.M. Castle, he took some courses at Northwestern.
Okay.
So,
Now,
but-
when you were a little girl and you went to school, what
Yeah.
would you bring for lunch? Do you remember? They
bring a
have-
sandwich. We had syrup pails. We didn't ever have regular little school pails like they have now. It'd be a syrup pail, and we'd have a piece of fruit and a sandwich and cookies. You know,
Just in a
lovely
little
thing.
pail.
In a little
And then
sugar pail.
would you just drink water then at school?
And, well, the way we get the water, we have to take the water pail, and 2 kids would be assigned every day to walk to the neighbors and get the pail of water. And the kids would have their own little drinking cups that fold. You know, those little folding, I don't know whether you've seen them.
Mhm.
Little metal folding cups. That's what I had in my school too when I was teaching. And no electricity, no plumbing,
So just light from outside. and-
light from outside. And when I think now, I had a Christmas program at my school when I was teaching, and I had a regular evergreen tree put in a bucket of coal, you know, stand up, and all wax candles on it. When I think of it now, one exit in that place and have all those candles lit and all those kids and the parents and all.
Whoa.
How are we gonna eat?
They'd have to get ready for the state exam. They'd have to go into the courthouse to take their exams.
How do you teach all 8 grades? How
Well,
do you do that?
you just divide your time, and you had a recitation bench up near the teacher's desk.
Cheese.
And then you'd call each grade up separately, and you'd give, oh, thank you. That was nice. But they were all such nice kids. I remember that when I had 21 kids, I think I had 10 were Catholics and 10 were Lutheran
In your class?
in my school. But no one even thought about it.
So no, recitation.
And then at recess, we'd have 15-minute recess in the morning, and about half an hour at lunchtime. None of them could go home, of course, and we'd play baseball outside. I always played with kids.
You did?
I always played baseball with the kids in the warm weather, you know.
Oh, I had to love you.
And twice a year, the superintendent of schools would come around. You never knew when he was coming.
Oh, you
Of course, then
did.
you'd have to perform for the
And get a written
superintendent.
evaluation
yes,
from him?
we would get evaluation. And then one time, I had a program with my girlfriend. Mary King had a school north of me, and my other girlfriend who lived with us had the school east of us. And so we had a program together, and we rented the Sexton Hall. And we had fixed up the stage, and we invited the superintendent to come out. And of course, all 3 of the groups of people were there, you know, from the 3 schools. And it was such fun.
Or was it for Christmas?
No, it was a regular. I had an Indian play, and I had dancers from all the different nationalities dancing. The grandma made costumes. And
Oh, wow.
it was really nice.
I bet you got a good
I
evaluation.
love teaching.
And you loved having them perform, right? Doing
Oh, I love
plays.
that. Teaching and singing and all.
So you taught for those 2 years, and then did you
Taught
stop
2
then when
years.
you were having children, and then go back later then?
Well, then I didn't go back until your mom was in 5th grade. And your mom, the nun was sick. And your mom went down to the office and she said, you know, my mother could take care of the class because she was a teacher. And so she called me. It was your mother's fault that got me into that. It was.
It was your
And
fault.
I went over there and I stayed for 20 years.
For 20
Oh,
years.
20 years, 20 full years in that school.
Well, that was a good time though, because Aunt
Father,
Rita was.
Father, what was his name? O'Donnell used to call me Sister Margaret Mary.
Were they mostly nuns except for you?
There were 20 nuns, and there were two lay teachers, and later we got another lay teacher, so there were three lay teachers. But when I started out, there were 20 nuns.
20 nuns and
Yes.
just 2 lay teachers.
Yes.
How was that in the teacher's lounge then?
Well, it was fun. I loved it. I liked it. They were always very, very nice. I liked it. And of course, I taught 5th grade for 20 years, about 4 or 5 years. Then, like I told the kids, I was promoted to 6th grade.
Promoted.
Then they wanted me to take a combination class, but I didn't want to take it. No,
That's really
no,
hard.
I didn't want to.
And so you
So-
taught 6th grade all the other
6th grade
years
then all
then?
the years.
Wow.
I started the science fair in the school. And I had the Christmas performance. I had put on a performance during Advent. You know, all that.
Oh, you
The kids.
did? Can you remember any really funny stories about things that kids did in your...
No, I don't. Well, the gal next door said, one of the boys just came back in my class and he said, you know, Johnny's in the bathroom and he's playing with his yo-yo. I thought that was pretty funny. Now turn it off.
What's that?
She was married while I was teaching there and I went to her wedding, but I can't remember her last name now.
And what, she swore at her 6th graders?
Yes. She was shocked herself, you know, to get back. Oh, I never did that. And I never hit one of them, I don't think. No, I tell you, they were good kids. Oh, I love them. And and the parents are also great.
They were good.
Yes.
And then 1 year, or was it 2 years, my mom taught with you, right? Were you teaching at the same time? Or
Yes.
no?
Yes, we were. And then I taught, a couple of years, I taught an extra math class, and I forget the man's teacher, or what his name was, took my class for science, because I didn't care a lot for teaching science. So he taught science, and I took his math class. So I had two math
Aw.
classes, because I like to teach math.
Math and English and language arts, right?
Well, I especially like to teach math.
Math is your favorite.
So
Now, which
I
of your
did that
kids?
when your mom was in 6th grade. In 5th grade, I taught her math class.
Oh, you taught her math lessons.
Math and English.
Yeah, I guess I did teach English that time too.
Now, which of
So-
your kids did you
but
have
I-
in school?
What?
Which of your kids did you teach? Your own kids?
Rita and Jeannie, my granddaughter.
How was that?
I had her for 2 years.
You did?
I had her in 5th grade, and then she went. Then I was transferred to 6th, and she went up to 6th at the same time. So I had her for 2
You
years.
got promoted together. Oh, wow.
But,
And
but I used to enjoy it though, because I'd have a lot of extras. I mean, have debates and such as that, and the kids always enjoyed that. Debates in the science fair and science. I started the science fair, actually. I started it with my class, and then I asked the superior if I could have it down in the club room, which I did. I had it down in the club room. The next year, I said, well, why couldn't we start it for the whole school? You know, have a science class. And she said, well, if you'll take charge. So I did, and had for the whole school. So we'd have the best science projects down in the auditorium, and we'd get our judges from the high school, from the Catholic high school, would come over and judge the projects.
Oh, all right. So
Mhm.
they wouldn't know the
So,
names
yes.
or anything. It'd be
We
fair.
made all the badges and every other thing.
You did?
It was nice.
Wow. Did it ever go beyond your school? Did the other schools ever compete? Or
I think they still have the science fair.
they
And then I
still-
had, a couple of years, I had this geography fair. And that was nice too. Had all the, we were staying in Europe, so they represented the different countries in Europe. And then each one have an area in the auditorium where they could bring their displays and their dances. And so, yeah,
Oh, that would be neat.
we do dances.
Oh, that
It
was
was, I think that's why they liked my class, because I did a lot of those things.
Now,
know.
you didn't have TV when you were young and married with Grandpa. What did you do for fun, for entertainment?
We had the radio.
The radio and cards,
We
right?
didn't have a television for a long time after we lived in Illinois Park, because the kids used to go to other people's homes. I thought when they were going to school, it was too much for them to have television. So then, when we found out they were going to other people's homes to watch television, we thought it was about time to get one. I don't know what year it was even.
I was in 6th grade.
You're in 6th grade?
I was taking classes at the Art Institute.
Yeah.
remember?
So, well,
What was that, Howdy Doody, and what was on TV when you first
Captain
started?
Video,
oh yes.
Howdy Doody. What else? Oh, Mama, I remember Mama.
I remember.
Ozzie and Harriet.
How about those cowboy shows? So those
Oh,
witch
the
shows?
West,
Yeah.
little
Howard
boys'
and
club.
And how-
Cassidy, Cisco Kid.
Coming Mother. Oh, that was on radio, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the radio show.
Yeah.
So did you sit around the radio and then listen to radio
Well,
shows?
yes, we did. We'd sit around even before we get the dishes done at night. We'd go and sit around in the dining, in the living room, around that old television set. Do you remember the
Radio.
Radio? It was. You remember it? It was kind of
Yes,
rounded
it
with
was,
that.
it was the console. the
Yeah,
tall
console.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And so we'd listen to that. And then on Sunday we'd listen to Amos and Andy, and who were some of the
Jack
others?
Benny.
Jack Benny. Mm-hmm.
Mitch Miller.
No,
No.
no, not yet. What was the one with the closet? The
Oh, Fibber McGee and
Fibber
Molly.
McGee and Molly.
Fibber McGee and Molly. Mm-hmm.
is that the one where they
So-
opened the closet and his
Yeah, but
everything fell in it?
during the Depression, we had a tiny little radio about that big on the windowsill, and we'd listen to Amos and Andy, and we'd walk to the library and get books. We didn't have enough for car fare because no one did. No one had work, so we would walk down to the library and we read a lot during those days, and listen to that little radio, and have toast and tea every night.
Toast and tea.
Toast and tea, plum jam that we made in Iowa.
And toast and
Oh,
tea.
yeah.
And then your friends, what would you, just for fun,
Well,
get
Jim,
together with friends?
Bud Ferrigan was so good to us. He used to come over almost every night, and he taught us how to play pinochle and But then Grandma came to live with us when Mary was a baby. So that was in 1934. Grandma came to live with us.
Forever?
Yes.
That was when she
She lived with us for 30-some years. Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I was thinking that the other day.
She came to visit Mary and never left. She sold the farm from their house.
Oh, no.
my
She went,
God.
she went,
Are you gonna do that to me?
And I was thinking about that.
well, we bought our place down in Florida without looking at it.
You did?
Sure. We told Jane to be looking around, and she called and said that she found a place and she thought we'd like it. It was in the park and had a lot of extras, and a doctor had owned it. And we said, well, buy it. And so she did.
And how long have you lived in Florida?
25 years this year, in January. Thinking and dreaming, okay.
And in a toy shop, the sweetest of all romances, where little girls and boys shop, two dolls fell in love one day. She was a shy and coy doll from far across the sea. Every night the boy doll would sing her this rhapsody. You is my kindest portion, my pretty little portion. If you love me like I love you, no knife can cut our love in two. Oh, promise me, my portion, you'll always be my portion. I'll sing to you the whole night through. My portion, I love you. Wow. To the shop one day, then came a child one day to take the little doll away. As they wrapped her up and tied the string, she heard the boy doll sing, "You is my finest portion, my pretty little portion. I'll say you love me like I love you, and I can cut our love in two. Oh, promise me, my portion, you'll always be my portion. I'll sing to you the whole night through. My portion, I love you."
Grandpa and I sang that a good many times.
You did?
Oh, heavens, at minstrel shows all through Chicago. Yeah. And we had our wooden shoes and danced. Our wooden, I danced.
And you have music.
Huh? I
you
have
have
still have the music for it, yeah.
That's
No.
The other one. Oh, I know.
What about the minstrel shows?
Oh, well, the minstrel shows. Well, the minstrel show, that was a group from, we started down at the Notre Dame Church, the old French church in Chicago. And then we began going around to different parishes in Chicago, the poor parishes. And they charge admission, and of course all the money would go to the church. And so Dad and I did the Pupschen. We did the Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? And I'm trying to think what other ones we did.
When you dressed up like Sunbonnet Sally?
Oh, that was in the operetta at St. Sylvester's when we were at, overall, what was it? I don't remember. Sunbonnet Sue, something like that. We did a lot of it anyhow. And then after the minstrel shows were over, when we weren't really allowed to do minstrel shows anymore, we started a group called the Voyageurs, and we used to go around to different parishes and put on our plays. So that was fun. Yeah, we had a wonderful group. And then the St. Sylvester's Choir, Dad was president, Grandpa was president of the St. Sylvester's Choir. We used to sing at 6 o'clock Mass and midnight Mass and Christmas.
Were you in the choir too?
Oh, yes. Yes. We were there for 10 years, I think. We were in St. Sylvester's Choir.
And that was when you first
Even after we
were
moved out of St. Sylvester's Parish, we still went back to St. Sylvester's and sang in the choir.
Oh, how fun.
And then we were in St. Celestine's Choir for a while, too.
Is there a place there too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we
Variety
were in a
shows
place.
there, too.
That's when we were in Sunbonnet
That's
Sue,
when you
whatever
wore
it
the,
was. Uh-huh.
And that, it was like a variety show? That's what it was?
Well, yes, it really was, something like that.
Oh, how fun.
We were in plays for years, operettas and plays, and minstrel shows. No. Well, it started right after we were married, you know. Of course, Grandpa kept his job for almost 2 years after the stock market crash. that was in October in '29. And so then, just before Tom was born, that's when it really hit us, because that's when Grandpa lost his job. And,
What was his job?
well, he was working for the steel company. What was it? He was doing all their advertising, and he was city sales. And
Like
they let-
Mickey, is that like?
no, not Lapham Hickey, A.M. Castle. A.M. Castle is where he worked first. And so then he was out of work for almost a year. And during that time, of course, he sold fuller brushes, he cleaned furnaces, he cut lawns, he did almost everything, you know, just so we could keep our heads above water. And then we went out to Iowa for the summer when Tom was a baby. And he really enjoyed that summer because he played baseball all summer, belonged to a team out there, and he brought all of the uniforms from A.M. Castle. They had given up their team, and they didn't care who took the uniforms, so Grandpa took the uniforms. And he brought them out to Iowa, so all of these farmers had A.M. Castle uniforms.
Oh, is
And
that
they
funny?
played baseball all summer long, and it was just one of the best summers he ever had, really, and loved it.
He loved it because he grew up in the city, right? So this was
Yes,
his country.
yes, so he's out there. And he stacked hay, and he shoveled boats, and he did all kinds of things that summer.
And you had Uncle Tom, you
And,
had the baby.
yeah, Tom was a baby.
And you were expecting Frank?
Yeah, yes, and Frank was born the August after we came back to Chicago. We came back to Chicago not knowing what was going to happen. Didn't have a job or anything else, but we wanted the baby to be born in Chicago. So we came back, and then we went and lived with Miss Steckel. That was an aunt of one of Dad's very good friends. And so Frank was born there, and Grandpa got his job back soon after Frank was born. I think maybe about the same time Frank was born. But while we lived in her place, I did the cooking, and I made her grapes, and I entertained her company, and that was more or less paying for our room and board for that time we were there.
So you didn't have to pay any room, but just
No,
help with
no,
cooking.
just
So,
because it was the World's Fair, and see, all the people were visiting, all her visitors were there, so.
did you go to the World's Fair?
Oh, yes, I got to go, oh, yes, I did, I got to go. And Eddie Kate came in, of course, we got to go to the World's Fair. Yeah, that was a wonderful time, that Chicago World's Fair. I thought it was the most wonderful show I'd ever seen, ever.
Do you remember seeing some things there that you?
Well, I remember the high ride that went over the water and took out, I think there must be a little island off that area. And the high ride would go out, you could go out to the island on that and then go out and stay out there for the fireworks at night. There'd be fireworks every single night during the
It was
World's
Navy
Fair.
Pier.
Is that Navy Pier?
Mhm.
No, it wasn't Navy Pier.
It was out.
It was out in South Chicago. It was around from 12th Street on in that area. And
Is that McCormick Place?
I don't know,
I don't know what that
possibly it would
island
be near that.
Sure.
Because not many of the buildings are standing now, you know, that they had for the World's Fair. A lot of them were temporary.
Okay. Just for
Beautiful,
the World's
oh, it was beautiful, the lighting and everything, so nice. And of course, they had, all countries were represented, Germany and Italy, and they each had their own exhibit and a show.
Oh, wow.
The French would have the, what do you call it, dance?
Can-can?
Can-can, they had the can-can and,
Oh,
that.
that's fun.
This is lovely. So, we go down there and spend the whole day. I remember Frank was a baby, and Bud Ferrigan came and stayed with Frank the whole day, so we could go down to the Bud Fair, for Ferrigan.
Did you remember? Turn it off. Who's that? Howard?
Oh, Uncle Howard. Oh, yes, Uncle Howard was 4 years younger than I.
Oh, tell about the whole thing, I mean about your sister.
Oh, well, my father died when I was 8 years old. He was kicked by a horse, and they diagnosed it as not cancer, but tubercular spine. And he lived 2 years after that. But my mother took him to Iowa City. Well, she took him first to the Mayo Brothers up in Rochester. and then to Chicago, and then finally to Iowa City, and that's where he died.
Or was he kicked by a horse in his leg?
In his spine. He was on his spine. Uh-huh.
What do you think it was, really?
Well, I would suppose it would be cancer, you know?
Cancer caused by being kicked though?
It could have started, I don't know, cancer of the bone or something.
Oh.
But, and before that, just 2 years before that, my little sister was killed. She was playing with her doll in the chicken house, and she wanted to put her doll up in one of the nests, and she climbed up, and evidently the cupboard was wired up somehow or other, and the wire snapped and fell on her and broke her neck, and she died instantly. And I found her, and of course, I was too young really to realize what had happened, but I went in and told my mother, and Annie Kate happened to be there at the time. I said, I found Irene, but she doesn't answer. So they went out and found her, and I just remember my mother picking her up and rocking her and not believing that she was dead. Just rocked her and rocked her.
She rocked all night.
That's it. Mhm.
She rocked her all night.
No, not all night, but she rocked her. Medicaid was there. So that was,
Aw.
I was very sad.
How old was she? 3?
She was 4. I was 6. She was 4, and Howard was 2.
Oh.
And right after that, we went into photographer, and my father had his picture taken of Howard. I think I still have that picture
After that happened?
after that. So, that was very hard time. All of the families seemed to go through hard times. It was hard in the country. And then Uncle Henry's losing their son, Chris, and Eddie Cave losing 2 children. Little Mildred, she was 2 and a half, and
What happened to her?
she had whooping cough,
Oh.
and after the whooping cough, I think they called it water in the brain, and she died when she was 2 and a half. That was, she was their second child. Bernadine was the oldest, you know, and then Mildred. And then the other little one was Pauline, and I think that she was born right after, just before Jim Mahoney was born. And she died, they called it pneumonia, but she was a husky-looking little baby, beautiful. Cold winters, you know,
Right.
you know. Housing.
And Howard?
Well, Howard, he was a cute little guy. He was the teacher, and everybody just loved him, my brother. You know, and of course all the neighbors loved him. They all called him Stub and Shorty and everything else. And he grew to be pretty tall after that. But after my father died, then my mother had to go out and work, of course. And so then he was left more or less to the neighbors to take care of. And he'd work for one and then the other and get his
Is there
room.
aunts and uncles?
And, well, he'd go to Uncle Henry's, of course, when he was small. He didn't walk. But we stayed at Uncle Henry's when my mother would be working. It's just like we lived there. We never asked if we could come or anything else. We just made ourselves at home.
Yeah.
And they understood it that way. So it was pretty hard. But my mother was a wonderful worker and a wonderful person.
Was she a seamstress? Is that how that
She
what
was a
she did?
beautiful seamstress. She hung wallpaper. She used to go and take care of mothers and babies, new babies, stay with them the whole 10 days, take care of the mother, and do the cooking.
For the mom.
Mm-hmm. So, but I used to feel kind of sorry for Howard because I thought he was kind of pushed around, you know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
having a father and
Right.
going around from one neighbor to the other. They all loved him.
What about the Hobbs? You were gonna say?
Well, Hobbs were our very best friends for many, many years. And we met them when Mary was a baby. And our 3 had whooping cough. And I think that theirs got it at the same time. Eileen was when Eileen was a baby.
Oh, that's not much.
And they lived across the street from us. And we just got acquainted that way. So that would be, I was trying to think about what year that would be, but it was when Mary was a baby. That would be in 1934. And they were our friends, I guess.
And how many kids did they have?
They had 6. Mm-hmm. Yes. They had 4 girls and 1 boy. Mm-hmm. So, and they used to be such good friends that our kids almost thought they were cousins. They were just the same as cousins to us.
What are the names of all the cats? Or?
Well, Stephen, Lorraine, Marcella, and Eileen was a twin, and her twin died at birth.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yes. And then Brian, and then Jeannie. Jeannie's in Lorraine now. So,
And would you go on vacations? Or
we went on vacations together, we played cards. We played cards every week, one week at our place, next week at their place, for years and years and years.
And all you kids,
We
all
went,
the kids would
they,
play, right?
they came to Europe when we were over there, and we went to the Canadian Rockies with them, and to California, so we had wonderful times. And, Center Lake, can't forget Center Lake. Oh,
Where was they at?
Center Lake was a little, little bitty lake right over the Wisconsin, was it?
Was in Wisconsin.
Just over the Wisconsin line, I guess. And we used to rent the cabin. I think we'd get it 2 weeks for $25, the cabin. And there was an old garage. Old Mr. Orvis owned the place. And the kids would play checkers with him. And we'd play the old piano in the garage, dance and do everything
I
else.
thought it was a barn. Bigger
Well,
than
it
little.
was, yes, it was like a barn. And then we call the Hobbs, and they'd bring their whole family up. And one night there were 21 of us sleeping in that one cabin, one bedroom.
Well, it had a big porch.
The big porch, they were sleeping on the porch, and Grandma was sleeping crossways in the bed with all the kids. So, because there wasn't room the other way, you know.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Mhm.
And it was a nice lake, and could you?
Oh,
Yeah.
but I
have
tell
boats
you, we had
and
such
things?
good
yeah.
times in that place though. And we had an old rowboat, no motor, just a rowboat, old wooden one. And Grandma'd go out fishing with anybody who would go with her. Grandma'd be up there too, and Uncle Howard. So,
And Uncle Howard had 9 kids, right?
12.
12? Wow.
yes, Uncle Howard had, yes, one died at birth, and then he had 11, and then lost 2. They must have 9 left then, huh? I guess so. So,
Oh, wow.
but I tell you, I had some happy days. My school days were very happy days, so, Greg. I love school.
Teaching school?
I loved going to school, and when I was a kid, I'd stay after school every night if I could, just to be with the teacher and to do something at school. And in high school, I loved it. I loved every bit of it.
How many were in your graduating class?
I think there were 70, something like that.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
And
And,
she was the star of senior play.
well, you know, that was a big surprise. That was kind.
What was the play?
Daddy Longlegs. That was Judy.
Judy? Oh.
That was the biggest shock of my life because I tried out. You know, everybody tried out. And we were all called into a room that night, and the professor and the principal, they were all in there. Everybody was in there, and they were going to name the cast. So they kept naming all the bottom ones, all the orphans, all the people who were in the cast. And I thought, oh shoot, I didn't get in it. I just didn't get in it at all. And all of a sudden they said, Judy, Margaret Ferrigan. And I just about fainted right there. I didn't know. I walked back into the assembly and I was numb.
Oh, wow.
And oh, how I worked on that. I went to Mary Kane's house, and Mary Kane had a very important part. And so I stayed the whole vacation at her place, and we studied every day. So when we went back, we knew every single word, and it was 4 acts.
Oh, wow.
It was really a fun show. But it was such fun.
And you were a gymnast, and you liked to do the rings.
Yes, I got my A for the rings, doing the rings.
Oh, doing the rings?
Rings.
Really?
Rings.
Oh, wow. She's an athlete, too. A for
I got my
Algona?
A. I got my A.
For Algona, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
her
Grandma got me a real nice, heavy sweater, you know, to put the A on.
Oh.
She lettered in rings.
Lettered in the rings. Wasn't that neat?
So,
Oh,
no.
wow.
That's where Molly gets her gymnast.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're all pretty athletic.
That's one exception, but that's okay.
Oh, gosh.
What else?
What else was, where was Skip?
Teaching school?
Well, we did that.
No.
Yeah. What about being a mom with all those 5 kids?
The 5
Rita like happened to be in a high chair for a really long time?
Oh,
She was
well,
old.
there were 8 of us around the table because Grandma lived with us. And it got so didn't have room, really. So Rita stayed in the high chair. Finally, Tom said, "Ma, I think this is ridiculous," because her feet were almost in the floor.
Poor little Rita.
Poor Rita, yes. No,
But it
yeah.
was smaller than
See,
Rita.
Grandma lived with us, for over 30 years.
That was a good.
Yeah.
It's not an
And
option.
you always had company. in
Well,
your
there was
house,
always someone living with us, always. Because Alice and Don lived with us until they were married, and Howard lived with us and Russ lived with us for a year. Howard lived with us for a long time after when he first came to Chicago. And when he was in school, we brought him to Chicago to send him back to school. Then, of course, when the Depression hit, everything broke up, so went back home, went back to Iowa. But I was trying to think who else lived with us. Elizabeth Fates lived with us for a year while she took her beauty course in Chicago.
Who was that?
She was one of my pupils that I had on the farm in Iowa. And,
She came and lived with you for a year? Oh, my
lived with us for a
goodness.
year. So. And Matt and Treese lived with us for almost a year after he lost his job before we lost our job.
Now,
In
who
the
was that?
Depression, that was Depression days.
Those were friends?
So that was Ferrigan,
Oh.
Matt Ferrigan, and his wife. So. Well, haven't you heard enough about me?
No.
No, I'm trying to think what
How about
what
when
we
like
missed.
my mom was dating?
When your mom was dating?
Oh, brother.
Well, Bob.
Oh, yeah, what's that story?
Oh, my mother.
Oh my gosh.
Kathleen brought this young fellow and introduced him to Grandma. He said, "Grandma, this is Bob." And she said, "Oh, Bob. There's so many Bobs come around here, I don't know which is which." No, sure. And then the night your mom brought in someone and introduced, the Hobbs were all there, and she was going to introduce him and called him by the wrong name.
Never mind.
Okay. And I was trying to think about that time you and Rita went to
Oh my gosh, the Aeolian thing?
the Aeolian. They didn't come in
We
till
sang
morning.
in the
What?
Aeolians. We sang with the Aeolians. the-
Yes,
the
I know.
Choral group from Chicago.
Yes, but tell me what you did that night.
Oh, well.
You went to one of the singers' apartments where they had all red velvet for.
No,
Oh,
no, we went to a play, and then we went out to breakfast afterwards,
Yes,
and they had velvet curtains, and Rita and I were, well, they were kind of dorks, Mom.
I know they were. They were harmless.
So what did you do?
They were harmless.
We were making
They just
fools
came
out
home
of
in the morning, that's all.
You made fools out of them?
Beautiful drapes.
Oh, I know it. They made really
One of
fools
us-
out of those poor guys. No, your mom was a pretty good kid. She really was.
Very good.
And she had lots of good friends, always had friends.
And what's that story about the fly swatter? Tell the story about Grandpa and the fly swatter.
Oh, that wasn't Grandpa, that was.
Oh, it wasn't Grandpa?
No, that was, but Stork, Donna said, "Bud, bring out the fly swatter," because they were out in the porch, Auntie Kate and Graham and all. And so he didn't come back and he didn't come back. After a while, here comes with a tray with glasses of ice water. Oh, dear.
There's an ice
Yeah.
water.
No, but when I was growing up, though, we had a really nice social life because I belonged to the 4-H club and Plum Creek Township, and we used to go to Lake Okoboji up in the Minnesota line on picnics, go for the whole day, and of course all the fellas would go along too, so we really had good times. Go swimming, dance, and then we had barn dances.
And you were no wallflower, I know, right?
No, I like to dance. I really like to dance. And then we put on plays, and then the Farm Bureau, we put them on, and somebody built a new barn, and before they put hay in it, we'd use it for plays and dances.
Oh,
Those
fun.
things. So, we had a pretty good life, I think. It was hard not having transportation and being so far from town, being so far away from everything. When I was smaller, after I started going to school with us again.
Right, when you were really.
Yeah, was going to school in town. Well, my uncle
was a caller, what they called a caller. And he used to call the square dances. So when we go to the barn dances, he used to be the director, and he would say whether it would be a waltz or a two-step or whatever it would be, and then the square dances he'd call. And they were really fun because he had not just one particular kind, but he had quite a variety, you know, of square dances that we could do. And that was fun. And then, of course, they'd have the ladies all bring homemade cakes. They always have homemade cakes and ice cream and stuff. Mm-hmm. It was fun. Uh-huh.
And so you said when you got to Chicago, they were behind the.
Well, yes. I thought when I came to Chicago, they didn't dance like they did in Iowa. And we had, really, they were good dancers
Yeah.
up there. But, no,
So
they had all the
Grandpa
popular
danced?
dances, all the popular dances.
How was Grandpa?
Well, Grandpa never cared a lot for dancing. I missed that. After I was married, that's the one thing I really missed, was dancing. Because we did it always, you know, until I was married. He'd go to a dance, you know, in Chicago once in a while. And at weddings and all, he would dance. But he didn't care a lot for dancing.
No. Did you ever dance with like your cousin or? Did you dance with?
Oh, I danced
anybody
with
else?
Uncle Henry. Wow, we'd do the rye waltz and schottish, two-step, and all those one-step. He took lessons. You see, Uncle Henry took dancing lessons. And so he knew all those dances, you know. So that was kind of fun.
That would